Alright, welcome back to Super Sentai Review, episode number 445. Yes, it has been 3 months since my last review. Now, the main reason why I did not get a chance to review anything the last few months is because I reviewed, pretty much in the way, 2 Metal Hero shows and a Kamen Rider show. That's pretty much the reason for it. Now I'm back. Now, the original plan was to do Boom Boom after I did Tokuger. But I decided to make a switch. Mainly because, basically, that I'm streaming my friend's Kaku Ranger, and, well, when we finish it up, basically, I didn't know when I was going to get to this one, so I figured I'd get this one now. Plus, it's not very long. It's like 47 episodes. Which, just by sheer coincidence, is the same length as Tokuger. Yep. So, before we talk about the opening 2 episodes of Shuriken Sentai Ninninger, let's list off some fun facts about this show. Because basically, I love doing these fun facts for these Sentai shows because there's a good number of these ones. The first big one. Did you know this series was actually first airing when I originally started this review series 9 years ago? Yes. By the way, the show I think was almost finished by the time I started it. Yes, I think that's correct there. It was about a dozen episodes. I think I last saw when I was watching the early episodes was back in 2016. I think it released episode 16 by the time I actually started watching Sentai. So that was pretty much that what happened there, and it first aired 10 years ago this year. Next fun fact. It is the last ninja series to review for Sentai. Yep, the last one. Yeah, coming roughly 13 years after... Excuse me. I think it's about 13 years, I think it was, after Hurricane. Yes, 13 years. Yes, no, this show does a return of several previous Ninja Sentai Rangers. Several, and plus one from one other show that's not ninja based, but we'll get to that when we get to it. Now, this show is noteworthy also for another fun fact. It is the third show where the main weapon is a sword. The first one was Gangaman. The second one was Shuriken. Though it does have something in common with Shuriken, that it is the second one to feature a, well, it's not the sword thing. It's mostly where a sword looks tech-based instead of a traditional metal blade sword. The fact that it also has a device you put on the actual sword and you spin it. Though it is also the second time in Super Sentai history where the Morpher is also the primary weapon. Yes, believe it or not. So you might be thinking, what was the last show to do this? Kiroger. Yep, that was the last one did it. It does also feature a Power Rangers actor in this one. I will get to the episode, don't worry. It's actually an actor who actually does appear on the Sentai of this one. Now, basically, this was also... Okay, next fun fact. It is also the second to last series I have left to watch where it was at the Power Rangers. But which season was that for? Ninja Steel. Which, when I was watching the opening episode when they had the fight sequence in it, I'm like, did the people make Ninja Steel took that fight sequence and put it in the opening theme song? Because you don't see that in the main show very much, though. Not really. Now, of course, I love the Ninja Steel theme song. I thought it was a fantastic theme song. This one's actually pretty good. Yes. Though, I shall... Okay, so... And also, our main villains are yokai, which are the same villains from Kaku Ranger. Now, I've heard this show has a bit of reputation with it. Namely put, it has arrogant retcons that were the yokai. Another particular thing people don't like about the show is the fact that the Red Ranger of the show tends to steal character episodes that go to different characters. Yes, I heard this from a guy who I was subscribed. I haven't watched the videos in a while because he basically stopped doing toku shows because of false copyright claims. So he decided to retire from doing that particular stuff there. Yes. Now, have I seen so far where you have the Ranger who steals other people's episodes beneath them? And also, I heard that he was a bit disrespectful toward a couple of the characters who returned to the show. I'll be getting to that. Don't worry about that. Now, this show also has a ton of movies that we're watching. Roughly a special. There's also another tension movie. And several anniversary movies. At least 2 of them. One I'm watching for Kaku Ranger because basically one of the actors from that show does show up in this one. There's also one for Hurricane Ranger and there's also for Hurricane Ranger a couple of things. So I've got roughly going to be watching this show roughly about 5 to 6 movies to watch. Yes. So now I should point out though that they have this character. They explain the premise of the show, where we have this ninja referred to as the last ninja, and that sounds a bit arrogant of a title. The last ninja. Is he the last ninja ever? Yeah. What kind of title is the last ninja? It makes no freaking sense at all. Now, the team itself, unlike in the case of Power Rangers, where roughly 2 of the actors relate to each other, this one, all of them are kind of... Okay, so the Red Ranger and Pink Ranger are siblings. And the other 3 are cousins, but they all have the same grandfather. Okay? And the fact that, the Ranger's father is sort of a teacher in episode 2. Now, those of you curious though, is there some mythological Ninja Steel thing that comes from space per se? Not really. It's mostly just modern technology. So, the main villain in the show, you don't see him early on like you do in Ninja Steel, where he was there for the first half of the show. This one he's not in it very much, what I read. Mainly because he's sealed. So we had to focus on this other character who, in Power Rangers, this is Madame Odious. They don't really identify the name of the character, except I'm going to call him, he's basically Kurzemon Izoi. That's kind of basically what his name is. And I refer to him as a he, despite the fact that in Power Rangers, they made it into a woman. The only reason why I could think of that made this character into a woman is because the voice is very feminine. So they turn a character who was clearly a guy into a woman. LGBT politics, or at least whatever kind of politics basically Ninja Steel was doing at the time. So, we started out with basically where our Red Ranger is returning home from some journey or whatever. He summons his sword. He finds the main grunts of the series attacking his family dojo. Who are the grunts, you might ask? Well, these are the Higtogari. I think it's how you pronounce them. Yes. Now, excuse me, Ninja Steel. These are Kandabots. Yeah, pretty much they turned... Now, here's the weird thing about them. They're only here for about 9 episodes and then they're done. Yeah, they get replaced as the grunts of the series. Yeah. So they get replaced with different. There's like several different group of foot soldiers. This one. So also in the first couple of those, we do not see the main. Now basically the name of the villains of the series is a Kabanai Army Corps. They're led by a man named Gentitsu Kabanai. Yeah. So pretty much basically yeah, so he arrives home, fights the foot soldiers, his dojo is in ruins, and then his sister shows up. Yep, his sister. The Pink Ranger wonders what he did with number one sword. And it's revealed, oh yeah, their father sent it to him. Yeah, and I'm like, okay, why did the like? Well, watch this opening episode. So our main character, his name is Takaru Igasi, also as Akar Ninjanger. Ninja. Yeah, basically these terms related to Ninja Rangers as well. How is the best way to describe them? It's like nin something. I'm like, what? Yeah. So our Blue Ranger of the show, his name is Cloud. That's actually its nickname. Yakutamo. And he's a magician. Yep, because he basically came from the UK. We also have Nagi Masato. He is... Well, they don't actually know what he does anyways. There's Fuka, who is the Red Ranger's younger sister. And she tends to be very arrogant. Like, she's like full of herself. So... Okay, actually, no, she's actually the White Ranger. Yep, White Ranger. She's actually Shiro Ninninger. Yeah, she's the white, pinkish, which is interesting. The pink one is actually Kasami Muchi. Yep, and she is the Pink Ranger. Yep. There is also Tazamajachi. I can see he's the father of the Red and Yellow Rangers. And he's the son of the last ninja. Here's the one thing about him. He is not a ninja. And yet he attempts to teach his children and basically his nephews and his niece ninjutsu. Now, the eldest of all of them, the Red Ranger, he's actually more serious about his ninja training. Well, I can tell, it seems like he's very effective in combat, but not in simulated combat, per se. And even the last ninja himself, aside from his title, he's a bit arrogant himself. Where, like, everyone thinks he's dead, and then he shows up in episode 1 like, oh, who you say? How in the world do you think I'm dead? Because he fought this particular creature about 50 years ago, so given the fact this aired in 2015, I'd say he probably fought this thing back in the 70s. Well, 44 years exactly. So, I'm guessing prior to Go Ranger showing up in Sentai history, my guess is probably during the time of the early Kamen Riders, because the Kamen Riders exist in Sentai, so there's that. Because it's one they're going to meet later on. It's going to be quite interesting to meet that one. So, they get their morphers, basically these ninja stars. Well, that basically a shuriken here, but they put it on their sword. They don't say ninja spin like they do in Ninja Ranger. They just say shuriken something. What's the name of the roll call for this one? It is... Yeah. So, and of course, basically, like, they're not really interested in becoming Rangers at all until they're kind of coerced, thanks to a monster showing up here. Yes, a monster. Those of you thinking like, so the monster one is Yokai Kamagichi. He's basically a chainsaw themed monster who appeared initially in episode 1. Now you might be thinking, did they have him pop up in, well, Ninja Steel? They did. Excuse me. He was, in fact, the first villain of the series. Yep, appeared in the episode Forged in Steel. Yeah, he appeared in one episode. There's also Chipshaw, which is a completely different character, who appears in the episode Ranger Rubicon, which is basically the 10th episode of the series. Yep. Oh, and is equivalent to Kaka Ranger. It is the character Kamagichi, who will appear in episode 35 of the series. Except Disney the Chainsaw. Yeah, pretty much basically how it works is that we have a star thrown at him at this chainsaw and becomes a monster. Then they summon the Megazord itself, and this seems completely more arrogance on their series. Where the thing is, we have the Red Ranger sitting in a chair, and we have the 4 Rangers put their swords behind them and have to control the mech that way. The next episode has with the Blue Ranger being more arrogant, him basically stealing the front seat. I'm like, I say arrogance because basically, here's the thing. When I watched Kaka Ranger, the Rangers weren't arrogant there. Same thing with Hurricane Ranger. Yeah, the Ranger was full of himself, but they weren't being arrogant. And it's like a lot of the stuff in this one screams of ego. And I would not say nepotism. No. It's not nepotism here. It's more like entitlement, per se. Because the eldest is the Red Ranger, he has to sit in that magic chair. And using swords to pilot a frickin' Megazord. Which doesn't feel like a complete Megazord because basically it's the other one's basically attached to and having a frickin' chair. Also, the mech basically Red Ranger. Oh, in case you're curious though, like in the case of Ninja Steel, because they borrowed it from the show, we don't see the cockpits of our mechs. Nope. They're pretty much basically piloted by having the Rangers put their swords in the shoulders of these damn things. Like, the Red Ranger gets a robot, the Blue Ranger gets basically a dragon, the Yellow Ranger gets a dump truck, the White Ranger gets a dog, and Pink Ranger gets a frickin' train. Yes, seriously. And then they phone the mech, beat the monster, and everyone thinks, oh, they're awesome. They think they're awesome grandpas can teach them. Nope. So, of course, basically, they have their training with this particular Shuriken, which basically emits, like, they actually try their best. Like, it's fighter, or it's basically earth. It's actually, first it's leaves, earth, water, there's also earth and fire, and also Blue is very good at using this stuff because he's a magician. We even see his magic wand. Who taught him? Well, we won't find out until toward the end of the series, find out who actually is one who is a teacher. So, By the way, it's a very cool looking dojo they have for their headquarters. Now, this looks very similar, like, going into this particular room. We have this nice fancy stuff here. Now, this feels a little bit like Shuriken in a way, where it's basically like a technology-based basically like a home, or basically the dojo they refer to as, and they all train in this room. It feels a lot like that one, because that's the equivalent I have here. Because Hurricane had basically just a computer lab as their primary base. Kaku Ranger was basically based on a food truck. Not kidding about that. They were based out of a food truck. That was their base operations. A sentient cat food truck. Though at least I like their headquarters. I love it. Where basically stuff. You have it where he's like, he had the radio on the floor where he tells about his grandfather. And he gets flipping the board. I thought this was kind of funny. So, by the way, the alert system they have is quite interesting. Because in Shuriken, it's like these chimes. Here it's frogs. Okay, frogs. And just by sheer coincidence, our new monster for this one is basically a kappa. A monster from Japanese mythology. Yeah. Yeah. Yokai Kappa. And he appears in this episode plus in a battle special. It's a special DVD where basically, yeah. So you might be asking, did he appear in Ninja Steel? He did, as Sogor. And he appeared for 2 episodes. Really? Yeah, and there was a kappa for Kaku Ranger. Believe it or not, it was the very first one they ever fought in the series, who appeared in the first 2 episodes and appeared in episode 12, even the final episode of the series. So you're like, okay, so unlike in the case of the first one they fought, this was basically the equivalent of the first monster they fought in that one. Okay. And by the way, they crack his shell on his head with basically metal hand. Which I'm like, okay, that's quite interesting. So, this is where they debuted the blue variant, the Blue Dragon variant, where Blue pilots the Megazord, because, by the way, Ninja Steel, they weren't arrogant about basically, oh, we're awesome, and we're ninjas, like, yeah. That's overall what I see here. It's a lot of ego and arrogance. Heck, they even have it where ninjas basically just have when they even stand on top of giant, basically, where you have first the grandfather in episode 1, where he's standing on top of basically a power pole, well, basically for power line, and Pink does it in episode 2, this time standing on top of a flagpole. And they also have it where, oh, let's have Red basically run up a building. I'm like, wow. And then, of course, basically, because Blue takes a seat, Red's like, get out of that chair. He's like, nope. I'm like, wow, dude. Are you basically just ticked off because somebody stole your chair? Yes, seriously. And what's less of the second episode? Oh, how they use this particular shuriken. And at the end of the episode, I'm like, really? We have to basically steal a title from Hurricane to this one. We debut the first spear. And I'm like, I heard this. And I'm like, it's a general from the actual Yokai Corps. And I'm like, wait, first spear? That sounds like a position from the Space Ninja Corps. And it is, except this is not from space. This is Ranzo Gibi. We basically have his debut here in episode 2. And he is not around very long in the show. You're like, really? Yeah, he is not around very long. He's here in episode 12, but basically it's like, oh, by the way, his counterpart is Ripcon. And he appeared for 11 episodes. Okay. Unlike in the case of his counterpart from here in Ninninger, who appeared for, well, also for 11 straight episodes, but he was actually brought back. So, good on basically Ninja Steel for keeping him in basically about the same period of time, with the exception of his resurrected form. Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, he briefly appears at the end of the episode, but kind of just Master revives this guy, and he becomes the first general we see in the series. I'm like, okay, interesting. So far, at least. And here's something really interesting about this period of time. So, about 2 months prior to these two episodes coming out, we had the release of Tokuja vs. Kyroger, which basically was released 2 months prior to this. A movie that took place during the course of the show, which I actually really enjoyed this movie. But that's kind of the first two episodes in a nutshell. And you're thinking, wow, almost fucking 30 minutes about 2 episodes? Well, it's basically talking about a lot of stuff related to this one. Yep. So yeah, that's the particular view. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications. As for how long this will take me, I don't know. I have no idea of how long, like how many episodes will take up, but my goal right now when I go on break for this series is to get episode 30. But we'll find out basically how long it takes to get to that point. Okay, next video. Bye.